Yes, it is a Tuesday morning, August 8th. What is going on? I am Keith Irizarry. Mark Malusis, a.k.a. Moose, will join us in just a few moments. It is Moose and Keith with you from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern each and every Tuesday, and we have a loaded show as Hard Knocks gets started tonight, as we had a Hall of Fame game, as we have players still holding out, the Chris Joneses of the world, the Zach Martins of the world. We've got fantasy football drafts that are starting to ramp up. People are all fired up about football season, as is that man right there. We call him Ken Griffey Jr. or Mark Malusis. What's up, man?
What's up, guys? What's going on, Keith? How you doing, man? Good morning.
I like you in a backwards cap.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, man.
Now, let's get personal. Do you need a haircut, or you just felt like rocking that backwards hat?
No, I just like the backwards hat.
Yeah.
So that's it. Yeah.
I'm gonna hit you with a quick story. I was coaching Alex's Little League baseball. He was, I think, either 4 or 5 years old.
Nice.
And so this is, 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was. I always wore my hat backwards when I coached, right? So Alex started wearing his hat backwards just for warm-ups, not during the game, right? Picture day comes around, and we go to, set up for the pictures, and they have the real photographers there, and he goes to do his picture. You know how they always they pose you, you have your bat in your hand like that, and he had his hat backwards. And the woman goes, he should turn his hat around. I go, no, he's okay. It's for the picture, right? This is for us for forever, right? So that we have it. She goes, oh, yeah, okay, fine. So he takes the picture. We get into the team picture. I'm wearing my hat backwards. He puts his hat backwards also, and I'm very proud. And listen, I understand that some people may say, turn your hat around. I say Ken Griffey Jr. was the man, so I'm down.
There you go. Very nice.
And he was 4.
Beautiful.
Let him wear his hat backwards.
That's it. Enjoy it. That's it. I don't think it's disrespectful at all. So
no,
good morning, brother. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm fired up. I'm excited about this NFL season getting started. And I know preseason games, quote unquote, don't really matter. And a lot of the, star players we won't even see for a few weeks for real. But when you start looking at the depth charts, I don't know if you saw this morning, the Buccaneers depth chart was released, and it said Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask as starting quarterback. All that stuff gets me very, very excited about the upcoming NFL season. Those little things, they're like, oh yeah, we're a couple weeks away.
Dude, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. You mentioned I was a little late to the proceedings, some technical issues. So, but Hard Knocks gets going tonight for the New York Jets. So looking forward to that. And looking forward to seeing all the behind the scenes down in Florham Park, New Jersey. That's going to be an absolute blast. That's going to be fun. And I love the fact that the NFL season is here, no doubt.
Yeah. All right. So you want to start with Hard Knocks? Let's do it. So we saw in the Hall of Fame game, obviously Zach Wilson was the leader at the helm. He was the QB. But there was a certain someone helping him behind the scenes. Let's roll the little teaser video that they released on HBO Max.
Called by Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, he called that one.
Had to give him a little shout out there.
I'm ready for a bomb. Throw it up to Malik. Touchdown. Throw it to Malik. No, it's going to Malik.
Has time, floats a bomb down the left sideline, drops it in.
Yeah, Malik. Yeah, I knew it. Hey, what I tell you? Hey, where he at? Hey, what I tell you?
I love that. It's awesome.
Aaron Rodgers looks so happy to be a New York Jet. I don't know if it'll last, but he looks so happy to be a Jet.
He does. I mean, I think we've talked about it time and time again. He's refreshed. I think he's looking forward to the opportunity here in New York. I think he's looking forward to the challenge. I think he wants to prove a lot of the naysayers wrong. I think there's a lot of reasons why. And I think it was a relationship that had grown stale in Green Bay. And he's taking advantage of that opportunity here in New York with the Jets. And I think the support and the love that he feels from the Jets. And, he bought a home in Jersey. He's talking about the fact that he's going to spend multiple years here. He physically feels good. The Jets obviously gives money back. They're looking to try and win a Super Bowl in the next couple of years and love to do it this year. There's nothing not to like. And, Zach Wilson, when he gets an opportunity to start again in the NFL, if he does, is probably not going to be here in New York with the Jets. But that was a pretty cool moment.
And I think that if Zach Wilson could do some reflection, by the way, and look in a mirror, he would realize he hasn't handled his first foray into the NFL at the best way. Learn from Aaron Rodgers. While Aaron Rodgers at times was ornery with the media and could be standoffish throughout his career at moments, the work ethic that he has put forward, the ability, obviously, and then just the winning mentality is something that Zach Wilson should try to soak in as much as possible for wherever or whenever he gets another chance. And as for Aaron Rodgers, again, just to double back to him, all right, so I went out to dinner on Saturday night, a couple of buddies.
Yeah.
Most of them are Giants fans, okay? So you know how it is with Giants and Jets fans, right? Like, typically Giants fans like to make fun of the Jets and Jets fans because of things being so Jets and you're going to Jets this and blah, 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 right? I'm not, I don't proclaim to be a Jets fan. I say this all the time. My father's a Jets fan. I would like to see the Jets win just so he's happy, right? My goodness, the amount of comments made about the Jets that, Aaron Rodgers, he'll get hurt, or Aaron Rodgers, he'll do this or that. I don't know why people need to start bashing. Let's just enjoy. I don't know. The Jets and Giants aren't really a rivalry anyway. They're not in the same division. They're not even in the same conference. Just play ball. Have fun.
Yeah, I mean, they're not. I get it, but I think there's a little bit of jealousy. I think obviously the heat that the Jets are getting here and the support that they feel and the love that they feel. But I also think we're coming to here from a New York standpoint, and I don't know if the interest across the country is similar in nature. I think there's a lot of people that are going to, love to hate on the Jets and root against the Jets, but I think it's the most interesting story of the National Football League at the start of the year. I don't think they necessarily have the same draw as, say, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs or the Dallas Cowboys or that. Like, I don't know if there's the same kind of just internal interest. I think there's intrigue with the team because of Rodgers, but I also think there's limitations when you look at the people that are looking to hear about it day in and day out. Here in New York, we've got no other choice. Like, I'm looking forward to Hard Knocks. You and I both work in the New York marketplace. We're doing the shows now on Tuesdays here on the Better Sports Network, and we're gonna be watching it every Tuesday night at 10 o'clock on HBO because of the intrigue around Aaron Rodgers. I wonder how much pull it has nationally, though, across the country.
Well, let's pose this then. All right. So for everybody out there, and I see we got a couple people hopping into the chat, and you love the smell of Moose and Keith in the morning. Did I just make it weird? Nah, that's not weird. No, we appreciate that. Thank you very much. But all right. So the biggest NFL stories right now, what would you say if you had to list and I know you don't love doing lists, but I'm not trying to say like a top 5, right? If we just came up as a collective group here of the top stories, headlines in the NFL, it would probably be what Aaron Rodgers will do for the Jets, right? I think he would be in the list. The Chiefs trying to repeat, but also now dealing with Chris Jones holding out. The Cowboys with Zach Martin holding out. What else would supersede those 3? Jalen Hurts and the Eagles trying to get back to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, maybe.
Brock Purdy trying to get some health with the Niners?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the
Any
Niners.
Of the rookie storylines?
I don't know.
And I know that you and I are very self-conscious.
Listen, I think Dak and the
this.
Cowboys. You mentioned Zach Martin. Mahomes being and the Chiefs trying to go for a dynasty. Their 3rd Super Bowl, winning back-to-back. That's an interesting angle. Tua staying healthy down in Miami is an interesting.
Sure. Yep.
And whether he can. You mentioned the 49ers. Can they get over the top finally? I think Jordan Love in Green Bay is an interesting storyline and exactly what he is, replacing the future Hall of Famer and Rodgers, who's now obviously in New York with the Jets. I think those are all intriguing. I don't know if that's what makes the NFL so interesting. You can talk about day in and day out is that everybody cares about what everything else is going on. It's not so regionalistic. You care about what everything that's going on around the league. The Chris Jones contract scenario in Kansas City is an interesting one. Jalen Hurts is a fantastic one as well. You know, he proved all the naysayers wrong. I think there are a lot of people that are saying, well, let's see him go out there and have that kind of a year again for the Philadelphia Eagles, which I think he will.
But I think one of the reasons why I bring that up is that you and I both being in the New York market and covering New York teams, and you covering them even closer than me, I think that we are self-conscious of that, doing this national show where we don't want to make it sound like it's a New York-centric thing. But I think Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, I think it's a national story because this has so many ways it could turn out. The good way is Aaron Rodgers is awesome. All the young players for the Jets show up. The offensive line is better than we expect, and the Jets are in the AFC Championship, and anything from there could happen. The bad way is Aaron Rodgers and the Jets have a really tough beginning to this season. It's a tough schedule. They lose a couple of games. He gets mad at the media. It all gets blown up. And the next thing you know, they're a 6 or 7 win team. So I think either way, there's fascination with this New York Jets team that we maybe when's the last time we were this fascinated with the Jets? When Brett Favre was there, maybe?
Probably. Yeah, I mean, I think Rex made it interesting. Favre, the Revis contract. I mean, last time they were on Hard Knocks, 2010? I mean, the Roscoe Diner and Mike Tannenbaum and what was it, the peanut or pretzel M&Ms that Rex kept on pounding. All those things. I think that was probably the last time the Jets had this much intrigue instead of the intrigue of just being a laughing stock. I mean, and I think it's an interesting AFC East, obviously. The Buffalo Bills, as high as people were on Buffalo a year ago, I think people are a little bit more standoffish this year. The Miami Dolphins, I mentioned about Tua. Can Tua stay healthy this year? If he can, we know what Mike McDaniel's offense can do a year ago and the speed that they have in Waddle and Hill at the wide receiver spot. And then obviously you've got the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick with the reports of him being on the hot seat coming into the year and not having a succession plan after Brady went away and Brady winning that Super Bowl down in Tampa and just kind of that roster eroding and rotting away where people are now looking at Belichick's, drafts and grading them out and where that team is now. I'll tell you, they'll have a significant upgrade finally having an offensive coordinator in Bill O'Brien as compared to what they had last year. Patricia, who's now a defensive assistant with the Philadelphia Eagles, and Joe Judge, who I believe is now assistant head coach up there in Foxborough for the New England Patriots. But finally, they've got themselves an offensive mind in O'Brien. We'll see exactly what that offense does look like. I know you and I differ on the talent level of what Mac Jones is as a quarterback, but Ramondre Stevenson is certainly one hell of a young running back.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, though, to go further with the Mac Jones thing, if we're going to go there, it's not a hill I'm going to die on. Listen, I'm not rooting against Mac
Oh, no,
Jones.
I know you're not. It's just being honest. It's just
I mean,
at
in my estimation, I think he's an average NFL QB. I also don't look at the weapons around him and think, while he finally has an offensive mind to help him, Devontae Parker can never stay on the field. Kendrick Bourne is just a guy. Tyquan Thornton, most people don't even know who he is. Juju Smith-Schuster has not been the same guy since he was really a rookie in Pittsburgh. Hunter Henry, okay, he can never stay on the field. Mike Gesicki, there's a reason why the Dolphins let him go. I'm just not sure. Even if, let's say you're right and Mac Jones is an above average QB, I'm not sure the weapons are there for him to showcase that ability.
I just think the game plan will look a lot better. And you might be, and I mean, Hunter Henry's okay. The point being is that they don't have these dynamic receivers. They don't have these dynamic playmakers to make the job easier at the quarterback spot. You get into it, well, what is that? Is it that, or is it the quarterback that makes everyone around him better? The game plan will be better. There'll be less confusion. They'll have an idea of what they're going to do. Bill O'Brien is a professional head coach. Not saying Patricia and Judge aren't, just the fact that he has an understanding of what you need offensively to do in order to be successful week in and week out. And then we'll grade it out and see exactly what the New England Patriots are. I know you're not rooting against Mac Jones, but are those that look at Mac Jones and say, and kind of agree with you? I think there's a little bit more game to him. We'll see exactly what he has this year because he's got to start to show it, and it can't be the coaching being the excuse because now he's got O'Brien as the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, listen, he's a guy that I'm actually looking forward to seeing what happens with Mac Jones. I truly am. All right, so want to hear from you guys. YouTube, the easiest way. Go on there, click the call-in button. dial up. I don't even think you say the word dial up anymore. I just think it has showed.
Well, the question is, are we making too much more of the Jets?
I don't know. I don't think we are.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we are, but I mean, is it the draw that the Cowboys are, that the Chiefs are, that the San Francisco 49ers are? We want to hear from you. It's easy on YouTube. Just hit the call-in button. We'll take your calls. It's Moose and Keith. He's Keith Arizari. I'm Mark Malusis coming to you on this Tuesday. Coming up next, we'll get into a little brawl in baseball. We'll hit upon that. We'll do that next. It's Moose and Keith with you right here on the Better Sports Network.
I feel like this is a quietly contentious point in Dynasty Fantasy Football, what it means to actually be rebuilding. Some people say you should never truly be rebuilding. How do you view the rebuilding versus competing dichotomy in Dynasty?
So I will be the first person to acknowledge that my preferred format of fantasy football is just redraft. The years that I have played Dynasty, it has been I've drafted a win now team because I've seen people that have just gotten into the cycle of rebuilding and thus they just don't make any progress. So if you're rebuilding for the 5th year in a row, I just, I don't know exactly how you get out of it, but yeah, it's definitely something that can happen. And a lot of people, especially when we come out of the NFL draft, everyone's just instantly shipping off, draft picks and everything. So, I mean, it's definitely something that can happen.
Joey, do you feel similarly to it? Do you feel like you see people getting stuck in the rebuilding loop?
I mean, I would say people that try to rebuild in the beginning of seasons, of their fantasy seasons, I see them get stuck in that rut. I would really try to only ever rebuild if I knew I was going to miss the playoffs. Like, I'm always trying to play to win, even if it's maybe I don't know.
I think my big thing is the word rebuild is a much shorter time frame than I think most people say it should be. Like, they look at rebuild as like 3 years out competing. Rebuild, you're looking to compete next season. You know what I mean? Like, if you're doing it now, you're looking to revamp, and maybe there's a one season where you ship it off, but that very next season you should be competing. If you're doing it like that, I'm cool with it, but you got to have a plan, not just keep getting the young players, keep getting the draft picks. Otherwise, you end up like Tim. Maybe not like Tim who gets a bye, but you make the playoffs, you're in that like 4 to 6 range every year, just hovering in the middle. Nothing ever gets better, nothing ever gets worse.
I think I play like you in Dynasty, Simon. I play in 3-year windows.
100%. That's my go-to. And with the rate at which Dynasty leagues turn over, you should really only ever play in a 3-year window.
It's Moose and Keith with Mark Malusis and Keith Irizarry.
Dancing move. That's good. That is good. He is Moose. I am Keith. Wow. So, when's the last time you were in a fight? It's been a while, right?
No, yeah, long time.
Long time. We're adults. We can't fight.
Right.
That's not a thing. That's like a young person thing. Well, things in Chicago, we're learning more and more about the Chicago White Sox, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But this weekend, it was fight night, but it was fight night on the diamond, and the play-by-play call of Anderson and Ramirez from Tom Hamilton is now the stuff of legends. Roll it, Bernsey.
Here it comes. A swing and a smash to first by the diving Vaughn. Down the right field line. Kicks into the corner. Ramirez on his way to second. Head first slide. Safe and in to score is Jimenez. And another hustle double. Right over the bag at first. Now Hosey and Anderson square off. They're fighting. They're swinging. Down goes Anderson. Down goes Anderson. Ramirez went in with a head-first slide. Hosey never gets upset about anything. They came up chewing. Anderson squared off. Hosey decked him. Everybody from the dugouts and the bullpens congregated around second base. You never see Jose Ramirez get upset like that. And Tim Anderson was on the wrong side of that punch.
Wow. All right, your reaction is what?
I mean, I thought it was great. I mean, I love rivalries. I mean, I love when, and Tim Anderson obviously is not well liked around Major League Baseball. Jose Ramirez, chat about that, and there was a hell of a right
Yasmani
hand.
Grandal may
There
or
was
may not have smacked him
there
before
was
the
a hell
All-Star
of
break.
a right hand by Jose Ramirez to basically put down Tim Anderson. The call is amazing. Like it just, I like when there's animosity. I like when there's hatred. I like when there's a rivalry. I like when guys don't like one another. Not everybody has to be friends. Not everybody has to be business partners. Not everybody has to have the same agents. Not everybody has to be lovey-dovey and high-fiving. Like there can be animosity in professional sports. I think it adds to it. So, yeah, I mean, the White Sox are a complete utter mess. They just are, whether it be Middleton, who got traded to the Yankees, talking about there's no rules there, and it's like a kind of a lawless clubhouse, and anything goes. You mentioned Grandal slapping Tim Anderson because Tim Anderson basically said, "If you want to leave, I'll pay for your fare to get to get home." All of those things, and then he got slapped in the face, and then you get that brawl, and they get the suspensions. Anderson gets 6, Ramirez 3. They're appealing those suspensions. Both managers got 1-game suspensions as well. I thought it was. I understand. I'm a lover. I'm not a fighter, so I'm not one that's like all fine, kind of for fisticuffs. Even though my kids kind of like to beat each other up on a day in day out basis. It's just the house of being with 3 with 3 sons at 10, 8, and 6. But I thought it was great. I thought the call was amazing. Down goes Anderson was just awesome.
It had everything that you could want in sports, right? So nothing was that wrong with the slide. Tim Anderson decided to hover over Ramirez. Ramirez didn't like it. There was something said, a little point. And then the fact that Tim Anderson hockey fighted this one, I'm making up that phrase, like literally dropped his gloves. And then I don't understand why. All right, Moose, you're a righty, correct?
I am a righty.
You're a righty.
Yes.
So is Tim Anderson. So I don't understand why he's squared up like he was a southpaw, right? So he's squared up like this. You see him lead once, and then when he went with the left, he clearly didn't have the perfect form there. Yes, I'm breaking this down as if this is boxing. Left himself open, and then as Ramirez was able to be here, I mean, he just caught him kind of like that. It wasn't a perfect punch by Ramirez, but the way he caught him in the upper portion of the chin clearly knocked his equilibrium off. And you see Anderson kind of stumble and go back. And then even when they were trying to help him off the field, the legs were buckling a little bit. It wasn't the perfect shot by Jose Ramirez, but it was awesome.
Well,
and
right.
What'd you say?
It just caught him right.
It caught him right. The other good part about this, by the way, is that no one was seriously hurt. Like, if we're going to have any of this in our games, in our sports, you don't actually want to see these players get injured. It was, it was a quick bada, bada, bada. Terry afterwards saying boys will be boys, kind of. When the reporter said, what did you say? What did you think of Jose Ramirez's left hook? He goes, you mean the right hook?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, Better Boss goes, can you imagine John Sterling on the call? No. I mean, it would be amazing. I thought the play-by-play was fantastic. I really did.
Yeah, Hamilton nailed it. He nailed it.
I thought it was just utterly and completely amazing when you look at it. It's fun. I mean, and I'm an old baseball rules guy. Like sometimes you get into these conversations like I don't mind guys getting hit on purpose. I don't mind guys throwing inside. I understand not throwing at the head. You never want to do that, especially when you're throwing the ball 99, 100 miles an hour. But purpose pitches to me work. Being upset. If you show up an opponent, that opponent then take it out maybe and hit you in the rear end or the small of your back in the next at bat. To me, that's part of the game. I know to some they say, why? I mean, that should go by the way. I mean, it's so, it's so kind of, it should go the way of the dinosaur and should be out of the game and eliminated from the game. To me, it doesn't. I think it goes hand in hand with the sport. And I think what transpired between the Guardians and the White Sox, I thought was was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll go on the other side of you for one thing. I don't subscribe to the hitting people on purpose part. This ball that we have that these guys play with and the velocity they throw it with, I just don't like it. Now, I do like purpose pitches though. And that's where, so I think we're similar there. Like, I don't mind buzzing someone. Honestly, I don't even mind what Randy Johnson did to John Kruk back in the day in the All-Star game, like throw over his head. If there's a reason why if there's a reason for something, then you do it. But I don't necessarily think you need to hit the person with the ball. I think you could, you can make your point by throwing it behind the person, over the person. You're trying to scare them, get them off the plate. You're trying to make a point. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, yeah. So you and I will disagree. I mean, it's kind of just an old school way of doing it. I mean, it just is. Just like you saw last night with the frustration, the frustration you saw from Aaron Boone in the Yankees-White Sox game where he was going after it with Laz Diaz. It was kind of an old school. It wasn't to the level of Earl Weaver, to the level of Billy Martin, but it kind of did that. And I know Boone's gotten talked to earlier in the year that he was a little bit too much with the home plate umpire. And I thought Laz Diaz and the back-to-back games of Angel Hernandez and Laz Diaz, I think basically sent Aaron Boone over the edge because of the inconsistencies with the strike zones. I mean, Angel Hernandez on Sunday against the Houston Astros was downright embarrassing. And then you saw last night after a strike call, that was a strike against Anthony Volpe. Yep. You saw him go berserk and go crazy. To me, that's part of the game. I like when guys show emotion, that it's just not, this robotic person that's sitting in the dugout. Now you got to be true to your personality. I think Aaron Boone is going out there trying to support his players. And I think that times when you see guys buzz pitches and throw purpose pitches, it's a matter of, protecting their players or, playing the game, quote unquote, the right way.
Yeah. So the umpire report did come out last night or this morning, actually. So Laz Diaz missed 21 total calls. 14 of them were against the Yankees. You mentioned Angel Hernandez. It was a lower correct call rate than Hernandez had on Sunday. Hernandez is kind of notoriously known as an umpire that
he's terrible.
Yeah. Yes, you said it. Yeah, that's a very good.
Yeah, he's a terrible umpire. He shouldn't have a job.
He's been bad. The Aaron Boone thing. I love him standing up for his players. I think that if I'm a player, I want to know that my manager has my back, and Aaron Boone has his players' backs. He does. The antics going like this and mocking and mimicking him or whatever.
That was fun.
It was fine.
I understand.
He's going to get ripped for it today. There's going to be memes, and there's going to be people saying "Oh, it's the Yankees. You shouldn't do that. Don't be a laughingstock." It didn't bother me as much as I think it bothered some other people.
No, it didn't bother me. I thought. I think he's showing his frustration not only for the way that his team has played this year, but the umpiring that he had the last 2 days in the games that involved his squad with, as we mentioned, Hernandez and Laz Diaz. We're going to get into a little football because Matthew Collier, I should say, is going to join us next. Matthew Coller covers the Vikings for PurpleInsider.com. Will join us next. We'll talk a little Viking football. And what Kirk Cousins has in store for all of us in 2023. We'll do that next. He's Keith Irizarry. I'm Mark Malusis. The show is Moose and Keith right here on the Better Sports Network.
So let's get into some best ball philosophy here.
Yeah.
In your experience, going back many, many, many years, drafting in national tournaments, Bradley, have you historically been shying away from the running back position in favor of wide receivers, in favor of, if you're drafting in the FFPC tight end premium format, in favor of tight ends as well? Is that the smart play when you're drafting this early in the drafting season?
Yeah, so taking value is going to be huge, and looking at running backs and wide receivers, you want to take a look at how the structure is. So you mentioned earlier the FFPC has a couple different types, they've got super flex and one quarterback, and so that's going to change your strategy a little bit if you have only 2 wide receivers or if you're drafting 3 wide receivers. And of course the PPR is a different aspect compared to other formats or other tournaments, and so keeping in mind the pass catching upside of some of the running backs may be more valuable in those formats. So the Austin Ecklers, the Christian McCaffreys, may be more value because they get more receptions, and so like I loved taking late shots a couple years ago on like the JD McKissicks of the world, who would get 50 receptions really cheaply. So that's something to consider. But when it comes to like overall value, like you're in the middle of a draft, and you just noticed that, I don't know, maybe it's Chris Godwin has fallen 14 spots, but Chris Godwin was not in your plans to be drafting. Like maybe you don't have a strong player take on Chris Godwin, or my take is that I don't think the Bucs are going to be particularly good this year. But for him to be dropping, let's say 14 spots is more than a full round. And based on the data that we've seen, if you get to draft a player more than 12 spots ahead or behind ADP, so they drop 12 or more spots, you have an 84% edge over the rest of the tournament players who are drafting this player, because typically this player isn't going to drop. The average draft position is a really strong indicator of where a player is going to go. And I think that is also on the flip side. If you are reaching too much, you're giving up value in your drafts. And so when it comes to value-based drafting, you need to consider, just because this guy is in my plans or I don't have a strong player take on him, maybe that's your opportunity to sprinkle in some shares of this player at a good price.
It's Moose and Keith with Mark Malusis and Keith Irizarry.
Matthew Coller joins us now. Let's talk a little Viking football, shall we? Covers the Vikings for Purple Insider. Hey, Matthew, appreciate the time. Mark Malusis, Keith Irizarry with you. Thanks for the time on this Tuesday morning.
Yeah, what is up, guys? You picked a good day. The Vikings have a night practice tonight, so I'm very excited for that. They put them under the lights. They've got a big stadium there in their facility, and they fill it up with fans. It's pretty cool.
Well, let's start with that. I love that. I saw the family night for the Green Bay Packers. The Eagles had their practice. They had like 50,000 people there, so it's great. People can't wait for the National Football League to get back. What are your expectations coming off a really kind of where they were the cardiac kids last year, winning all those games by 7 points or less, get into the playoffs, lose to the Giants. Cousins had a really good year. What's the realistic expectations and what is really a wide open NFC North this year, Matthew?
Yeah, I don't know if it's quite unprecedented to see this much turnover on a roster after winning 13 games, but it feels like it is. I mean, I can't remember another team that won 13 games and said, let's move on from most of the key players of that team that were on the older side. It just doesn't happen that often. Now, I think that was the smart thing to do, to move on from Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Eric Kendricks. These guys were not at their peaks, and I don't think they were going to get better. They were expensive, and so they decided, we're going to refresh this roster. We're going to give a lot of younger players opportunities like Alexander Madison, like KJ Osborne, to step up into that kind of wide receiver 2 position, into a Jordan Addison, who they draft in the first round, who also is competing in training camp for that second spot next to Justin Jefferson. But that also makes it kind of difficult to figure out where we should set the bar, right? Like their general manager, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, said when he first took the job, they were going to try to competitively rebuild, meaning like, we're not going to tank, we're not going to go to the bottom, but we're also going to try to bring in kind of new blood into this roster from the guys that were part of the previous regime. And they've really done that. But does that mean that we should lower the bar for them when they did just win 13 games, when they do have, I think, a very good coach in Kevin O'Connell, and when they kept Kirk Cousins? So you're refreshing the roster, but it's not like you traded away Cousins and you're playing a rookie or something. So I think the bar still should be that you compete for the NFC North, that you should be in the playoffs, and that we should have a high standard, because they didn't go to the bottom, try to tank for Caleb Williams or Drake May or something like that as part of this kind of, tear down. And then as I watch a training camp, and I know that everyone gets high on football during training camp and thinks that the team that they cover is going to be better than you think, but I think that they've got a lot to work with here. They brought in Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator. They were horrendous defensively last year. I think we've seen them give the offense a really hard time with Brian Flores's aggressiveness and his blitzing. And I think he's added kind of a new attitude to that side of the ball. And we know how good the offensive side can be with all the weapons that they have. Addison has looked really, really good so far. So, I think as far as expectations go, it should be win the NFC North, get back to the playoffs, give yourself another shot, which may be your last chance with Kirk Cousins because he's in the final year of his contract.
Matthew, let's put the word expectations to the side for a second. I'm a big fan of when I get to talk to people who are like actually at the practices and covering the team inside and out, vibe and chemistry. What's the vibe? What's the chemistry of this team? Because you mentioned it, there was a lot of turnover.
Yeah, and it's really energetic, I would say, because in the past training camp, there were so many veterans on these Vikings teams. I started covering them in 2016, and it's been a veteran team the whole time. It's been a team that had high expectations. They went to the NFC Championship in 2017, and then they signed Kirk Cousins. They've been chasing a return to the NFC Championship since then with lots of different kind of all-in type moves to do that, including multiple contract extensions for Kirk Cousins. So it's been older players, guys who are sort of trying to get through training camp healthy. But this year, there are more battles all over the field than I've seen in any training camp that I've covered for this Vikings team. I mean, you have running backs behind Alexander Madison trying to, vie for some position there. You have Jordan Addison and KJ Osborne both putting on a show every day in training camp as they push for more targets from Kirk Cousins this season. You have cornerbacks. Right now, the combined starting outside cornerbacks have about 100 snaps in the NFL. So these guys are battling, right? And the safeties, they drafted Lewis Seen last year in the first round, but right now he's behind Cam Bynum and Josh Metellus on the depth chart. And even the linebacker position, they have an undrafted free agent who's taking first team reps, Ivan Pace Jr. out of Cincinnati, who is kind of the UDFA darling. That player normally doesn't turn out, but he's all of a sudden been one of these rising star type of guys. And then there's also lingering the idea of, should they look to free agency to bring in some of these guys? Like they didn't bring in a Justin Houston, but they had, Dalton Reisner, the guard, visit them recently. So are they thinking that they like what they see and they're, poking around the veteran market and trying to bring in some guys? So I think that it's been very much on the upswing. And I wondered a couple of weeks into camp, like, would I think that their Vegas over under, I believe, is 8.5. Would I think it was going to be over or under a couple weeks into camp? At the moment, I'm feeling like they're better than I thought that they would look. And yet still, there's a lot of those question marks. So you could convince me that if a few things go wrong, it could actually get quite bad because they don't have a proven roster. They have so many guys that are getting their first opportunities.
Matthew, we know on the national landscape, the perception of Kirk Cousins, being around Cousins on a day in, day out basis. I thought he was great in that Netflix series Quarterback. I thought he came across really, really well. Do you think Cousins gets too much flack for a guy that has made himself a lot of money, but has also been really productive?
Yeah, I think that everybody is right and wrong about Kirk Cousins. Like there's a lot of reasons to criticize Kirk Cousins over the years. I mean, the Netflix documentary was great. I'd love them to make one about me and show it to my wife and give me the editing power and be like, look how great I am.
Yeah.
That's it.
Peyton Manning and Omaha Productions could, I think, make any of us look really great. And, but it was cool. And I love all that stuff, NFL films. But we also, like, when you pull back, one playoff win in 5 years with one of the most expensive quarterbacks in the league every year. And it is, I think what the documentary showed is being the 12th best quarterback in the league is really, really hard. And there are only a handful of human beings walking this earth who can throw the ball accurately, command an offense, take hits to the ribs and still get up from Jonathan Allen. I have no idea. I mean, I bumped my shin and I can't walk for a day. I have no idea how Kirk Cousins deals with that. He's a very impressive person to have come from a 4th round quarterback, not the most physically impressive guy, to have the career he's had. At the same time, they didn't sign him to say, oh, he's a fairly impressive guy. They signed him to get them over the top, to get back to NFC Championship weekend And they've never even come close to doing that since he's been with the Vikings. And I think part of it is, of course, how expensive he is, how hard that is to work around his contracts. They've always been short term. They've always had huge cap hits. And the other thing is that there are weaknesses to his game that show up. And yet the 4th and 8 at the end with the Giants is going to stand out to everybody. But the shortage of athleticism, we see the best quarterbacks are kind of aliens, right? These guys who are able to run, the arm strength is through the roof, things like, the Patrick Mahomes and the Josh Allen possess that Kirk Cousins simply does not. And there's always just been kind of a day late, dollar short to this team. And last year, I remember having the discussion when they won 13 games, like, was that a successful season? And a lot of fans were like, I don't know, it was fun, but not really, because the bar was set higher than that, higher than losing in the first weekend of the playoffs. And it all kind of ties back in to Kirk Cousins. So if you say that you think he's a really good quarterback, I mean, you're absolutely right. But if you say that he's been a disappointment, or the overall results have been a disappointment in Minnesota, then you're absolutely right.
He's got a lot of weapons around him. You've got now Alexander Madison finally getting the chance to be the bell cow. How do you think they'll divvy up the carries in Minnesota? I mean, he's 3 down back, right, Madison?
At least from what I've seen right now, he might carry the ball 320 times. I mean, the backup
fantasy
yes.
managers out there want him on their rosters.
Yes, the backup running backs have not made their case at all so far in training camp. Kene Nwangwu, who is a track star, amazing kick returner, has been banged up, and he didn't get any action last year. When a guy runs a 4.32 and can't get on the field at all, you certainly wonder why that is. And I think that they had higher expectations, but he's been beat up so far in training camp. That's another thing with, the track guys you always worry about. And then Ty Chandler was a 5th round draft pick from last season who runs a 4.38. And my gosh, can he accelerate quickly? But every time Kevin O'Connell talks about him, it's like, well, some of the details, he's not quite getting this or that. And so you wonder, do they trust him? And they drafted Dwayne McBride this year in the 7th round. And he's another exciting guy. His college highlight reel is really something. Like, he's like a Weeble, like nobody can knock him down, but in the NFL, they can knock you down. And so, he's got, I think, some time to go before, he's going to be ready. 7th round running backs don't always step in, like in Kansas City last year. So I think that, they love Alexander Madison. They trust him a lot. And even if he's not a guy who's going to have 75-yard touchdown runs like Dalvin Cook, he is going to consistently, I think, drive the ball forward, fall forward, get 3, 4, 5 yards. And that's really what Kevin O'Connell cares about, along with his really good pass protection, really good receiving ability out of the backfield, because this is pass first. This is not the Mike Zimmer days where it's run first and play action. This team is going to pass. They could throw 620 passes this year.
Matthew, what do you think? What do you think of Cook in terms of being an option for other teams? Do you think Dalvin's got a lot left?
I think that Dalvin Cook could probably pair with somebody else and be really effective. His top speed was still there. He could break away. He could score those 75-yard touchdowns. But every year, even his greatest years, if you look at the second half of the season, it was always half as good as the first half. I mean, by the first 8 weeks, you'd be having people talk about him for MVP. And by the end of the season, his yards per carry had gone down by a whole yard or something, because it was always being overused, getting banged up, slowing down as the season went along. And at this point, he's had a lot of those seasons where he's been banged up, and those add up. We all know this about the running backs. This big conversation about running backs. It's like, well, they're going to have to stop, falling off a cliff at age 28 if they want to get more contracts and things like that. So, with Cook, I totally understood it. On the outside, I remember seeing from a national media perspective, a lot of, analysts were saying, what are they doing? Are they tanking? What are they doing? It's like, I think if you watched every play last year, you would understand this. The burst was not there. And I also thought that he was playing it safe to some extent because of a shoulder injury that he'd been dealing with over multiple seasons. And he had more runs of either 0 or negative yards than anybody else in the entire league. And that does not work for Kevin O'Connell, who wants to be in second and medium and run play actions. So I think that if you paired him with somebody else and a good running system, that it would be fine, and you could use him for maybe 150 carries. But if you expect him to be a guy who's going to give you 250 to 300, your results are probably just not going to be that great.
All right, Matthew, last one here before we let you go is this. Give us all in our audience a 2023 Minnesota Vikings bold prediction. You have the full board, whatever. You could be a player, could be wins, whatever it might be. Let's get a Viking bold prediction for 2023.
They won't have a tragic missed kick. No, I'm just kidding. Here, that would be bold. That would be bold. I actually did an article of bold predictions, and I included that the kicking would be fine, and people got upset. They were like, "It's never fine." So I would say that as of right now, if I wanted to be a little bold with a player that people know who he is, I would say if Jordan Addison caught 75 passes, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, he has looked excellent in training camp. I wrote an article about it today. There's something he has, this natural ability, catch the ball. The toe tapping is kind of reminding me of Chris Carter at times here. It's just been super impressive. And I know it's more complicated than that being a wide receiver, but it sort of starts with that natural ability. There's a reason he's a 170-pound first-round draft pick, because his natural ability as a receiver is just really something else. So I don't know how bold that is to say the first-round receiver will be really good, but I think by the end of the year, they're going to feel like they have a duo for many years to come.
Yeah, 75 catches. That's pretty bold. I like it. And I'm a big Addison fan, so love that there. Matthew, great stuff on Twitter, X, whatever we call it nowadays. It's Matthew Coller. Covers the Minnesota Vikings. Purple Insider, purpleinsider.com is where you find all of your stuff. Great stuff as always, and we'll definitely talk to you throughout the football season.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Matthew.
That was great. That was fantastic. I like Addison a lot. So Burnsy came up with a really cool feature. So coming up next, we're going to do these things that we're going to call a trifecta, okay? Everyone knows what a trifecta is. We were just talking about the Vikings. So let's do the NFC North, the trifecta. We'll break it down, tell you what exactly that is when we return. Also, hey, guys, still want to hear from you guys. Click the YouTube button. You can call in nice and easy or line it up in the chat. He is Mark Malusis. I am Keith Irizarry. It's Moose and Keith, and this is Better Sports Network.
Breece Hall right now, and I've talked to plenty of high-stakes players, I'm sure you have too, Kev. Had Hall not torn his ACL last year, he might have been the 101 in drafts this year. That's how good he was looking last year, and obviously with the addition of Aaron Rodgers. At the 305, running back 11 behind Derrick Henry and Ramondre Stevenson, right ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs and Najee Harris. Your thoughts on him as a mid-third round pick? How have you been attacking him? Have you been getting him at that spot so far this year?
Yeah, if I start out with two wide receivers, Breece Hall is right at the top of the queue coming into the third. If I knew he'd be healthy for week one, I was still a little.
Well, he'd be going higher than the mid third.
Right. He may go 101 or well, RB1 at least.
Yeah.
But I don't think we know that even if he's healthy in spring and the summer.
Mm-hmm.
I still like if I'm running a team, if I'm the coach, I'm bringing him back slow. Like he's on a pitch count. Like I want him for the end of the season because I got Aaron Rodgers for the playoffs, right? Like even if he's fully healthy, I would work him in slow. But that is actually what you want. Like he's still going to get the high value touches. So yeah, if we know he's healthy, he's a first rounder. So like if he's sitting there in the third, especially when I get two wide receivers to start, I'll take Hall all day.
Yeah, it almost makes me think that the uncertainty with Breece Hall has made him unfairly fall too far, right? Like because we're talking about the team here in June. They're still hoping that he's ready for week one. This is not, oh, we'll see what happens. Oh, we're taking it day by day. Oh, we're liking how he's coming along. No, they still think by week one. And the fact that we have that timeline, I think, maybe bumps him up, especially as the drafting season gets deeper and deeper here in July and August. Maybe we start seeing him go up the boards as well.
It's Moose and Keith with Mark Malusis and Keith Irizarry.
All right, let's do a little NFC North trifecta, shall we? We're going to pick a division winner, favorite player for fantasy from the NFC North, and a favorite futures bet for the NFC North as well. All right, Keith, when you take a look at the division, obviously we got just a feel from Matthew Coller on the Minnesota Vikings. You got Love at quarterback for the Packers. Obviously the Lions just falling short last year, making the playoffs, but a lot of people are putting a lot of heat on Detroit. Maybe this is finally their year in the NFC North. Who do you think wins the division?
I go back and forth here. I don't think it's the Packers, by the way. I'm going to put them towards the bottom. I don't think it's the Bears as much as I do love their quarterback situation in Fields and adding DJ Moore. I'm a fan of the Bears. I want the Bears to do well. Leads me to Vikings and Lions. And Matthew Coller made a great case for a lot going on with the Vikings. I'm leaning Lions. I think that Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions are going to be, biting kneecaps. And I think Jared Goff, you could make an argument, is the most successful quarterback here. He's been to a Super Bowl. He looked like he really bought into the system last year. Losing Jamal Williams hurts a little bit, but bringing in Jahmyr Gibbs at running back, I like that. I think Gibbs, from a fantasy standpoint, can be fantastic for you. I think the rest of that team, just in general, leads me to believe that they can win 11 games and maybe 12, and I think that wins the division.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on Detroit. I think it's clearly a division. The concern you have is what exactly Jordan Love is. Saw the sidearm throw this past weekend in the friends and family game for the Green Bay Packers, where it was kind of a scrimmage, or it was a scrimmage. Like to see that, and but also saw a ton of missed throws. I don't know what Jordan Love is going to be at quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. If you tell me he's great, I tell you that Green Bay Packers, I think, have a chance to win the division. Can't see the Bears going from where they were last year to all of a sudden now being a team that wins their division this year. I know parity is the word in the National Football League, and we just got a feel for the Minnesota Vikings, who I think will be really, really good offensively. And I think Flores will help out that defense. But, they were the cardiac kids a year ago. I think it's Detroit. I'm with you. I mean, I'll take Dan Campbell. I'll take Jared Goff, amazingly enough, and I'll take the Detroit Lions. I agree with you about Jahmyr Gibbs. St. Brown's a hell of a young wide receiver. They're going to line Gibbs up all over the place and have him be a playmaker, not just, right behind and running the football. So they're going to use him a lot of different ways. They got David Montgomery in the football. I mean, there's things to like about the Lions this year. And I look at last year's being a building block. So I'm with you. I'm going to take the Detroit Lions to win the NFC North. All right. How about favorite fantasy player from the NFC North?
All right, so favorite doesn't necessarily mean who I think is the best, right? Because the best is Justin Jefferson. He's going to be the number one, number two overall pick in every fantasy draft. So I'm going to put that to the side for a second. I'm going to kind of talk you through the division, and then I'm going to get to my player. All right, so let's start with the Lions. I like Jahmyr Gibbs. Wouldn't list him as my favorite. Amon-Ra St. Brown, really, really close, and I gave him some consideration. Go over to the Packers. I do love Aaron Jones, but A.J. Dillon is still there. Scares me a little bit always about them sharing. Your guy, Christian Watson, love him too. Don't know what love is at QB. Gave you Minnesota, which then brings me back to Chicago. My favorite player from a fantasy standpoint is Justin Fields. And you're looking at a guy that's being taken anywhere from QB6 to QB7, which means you're getting him in about the 4th round. What does that mean for your draft? Maybe sometimes the 5th round. What does that mean for your draft? Again, we're talking about favorites here. It means that I can now go wide receiver and running back heavy with my first 3, maybe 4 picks, and not have to worry about quarterback till the end of the 4th round or the 5th round, and get a guy that can run for 1,000 yards and a guy that has a real wide receiver now. Sign me up for Justin Fields.
Yeah, I'd take Christian Watson. I love Fields as a player. I'd take Watson. I have affinity for the Packers wide receiver. I really like him. Liked him last year. Thought he was, the skill set that he has is utterly ridiculous. And coming out of North Dakota State. And you saw him start to flash as the year went along, back half of the season, his rookie year. And as long as Jordan Love can stay upright and actually hit some people that are actually moving down the field, I think Christian Watson, he's not the best receiver, obviously, in the division. That's Justin Jefferson, but he is my favorite player in the NFC North. I'll go with Christian Watson, the wide receiver. All right, give me your favorite futures bet from the NFC North.
Can you tell I like Jordan Addison?
You
I
love him
really
even
do.
more even after that interview.
Yeah, you know what? You may want to go look at that over. I think on most books his over under is set around that 75 number. So you may want to look at that. I'll go with this. How about him to be the rookie with the most receiving yards this year at plus 250? I think he's in the best spot because assuming he gets the number 2 spot, and that's not a guarantee over KJ Osborne. It's not by any stretch of the imagination. Teams are going to start trying to focus more on slowing down, not stopping, but slowing down Justin Jefferson. That means there's a lot of footballs to be had for the guy that's taking over, in my estimation, what Adam Thielen was last year. So give me Jordan Addison to get to the most receiving yards at plus 250 on most books.
Yeah, I'm going to take your guy, your favorite player. I'm going to take the over rushing yards. Justin Fields, 820 or 825 and a half, I should say, rushing yards for the season for the Chicago Bears. Had 160 carries a year ago, finished with 1,143 yards, averaged 7.1 yards per carry. I think you look at it, last 10 games of the season, had double-digit rush attempts in 7 of those games compared to once in his first 5 games. He's one of the true dual-threat quarterbacks. Give me Fields over 825 and a half rushing yards.
Frame of reference, by the way, it was my best bet last year coming into the season was that Justin Fields would top 499 and a half rushing yards.
Now it's 825 and a half.
Yeah, and I think you're right, by the way. I think he's, barring anything catastrophic injury-wise, I feel like he's running for at least 900 yards this year.
He's Keith Irizarry. I'm Mark Malusis. Straight ahead, you know what we're going to do? We're going to play a little real-time sports in a fantasy pick'em contest. We're going to do that next. Give you some suggestions. We got some other things to react to. We're going to be talking a little Ravens football a little bit later on in the program as well. We're taking you for another hour left to play with. It's a Tuesday edition of Moose and Keith right here on the Better Sports Network.
I feel like this is a quietly contentious point in Dynasty Fantasy Football, what it means to actually be rebuilding. Some people say you should never truly be rebuilding. How do you view the rebuilding versus competing dichotomy in Dynasty?
So I will be the first person to acknowledge that my preferred format or fantasy football is just redraft. The years that I have played Dynasty, it has been I've drafted a win now team because I've seen people that have just gotten into the cycle of rebuilding and thus they just don't make any progress. So if you're rebuilding for the 5th year in a row, I just, I don't know exactly how you get out of it, but yeah, it's definitely something that can happen. And a lot of people, especially when we come out of the NFL draft, everyone's just instantly shipping off, draft picks and everything. So, I mean, it's definitely something that can happen.
Joey, do you feel similarly to it? Do you feel like you see people getting stuck in the rebuilding loop?
I mean, I would say people that try to rebuild in the beginning of seasons, of their fantasy seasons, I see them get stuck in that rut. I would really try to only ever rebuild if I knew I was going to miss the playoffs. Like, I'm always trying to play to win, even if it's maybe I don't know.
I think my big thing is the word rebuild is a much shorter time frame than I think most people say it should be. Like, they look at rebuild as like 3 years out competing. Rebuild, you're looking to compete next season. You know what I mean? Like, if you're doing it now, you're looking to revamp, and maybe there's a one season where you ship it off, but that very next season you should be competing. If you're doing it like that, I'm cool with it, but you got to have a plan, not just keep getting the young players, keep getting the draft picks. Otherwise, you end up like Tim. Maybe not like Tim who gets a bye, but you make the playoffs, you're in that like 4 to 6 range every year, just hovering in the middle. Nothing ever gets better, nothing ever gets worse.
I think I play like you in Dynasty, Simon. I play in 3-year windows.
100%. That's my go-to. And with the rate at which Dynasty leagues turn over, you should really only ever play in a 3-year window.
It's Moose and Keith with Mark Malusis and Keith Irizarry.
Back at it for hour number 2. Yes, this Moose. I am Keith. 11 a.m. Eastern time, and it is time for us to dive into our RT Sports Pick'em. Real-time sports, here's how it goes. So you play the Real-Time Sports Daily Pick'em contest. You set a lineup. You got your player props. If you hit them all, you can win. You got baseball, you golf more. We'll do baseball here. 2 correct picks means you get 3 times your entry. 3 correct picks 6 times. 4 correct picks 10 times. 5 correct picks. Boom. Let me tell you how you deposit too. If you're a first-time depositor, if you've never done it before, they will match 100% of your deposit up to $200, which is pretty darn awesome. Use the code ALARM23. And we always remind everybody, and it's very true, listen, play responsibly. You can always call 1-800-GAMBLER if you have any issues with anything that you are seeing. If you're feeling like gambling is not any fun for you anymore, remember, it's supposed to be fun. All right, my man.
Yeah.
Moose, you're going to be up first here. So Burnsy's doing a good job behind the scenes, throwing up some of the options for us on a full slate of baseball. So is there a game that jumped out to you that you said you wanted to attack?
Yeah, I'll go to the Mets-Cubs game later on tonight out at Citi Field. Carrasco, Jameson, Tyone are your starters. I'm going to go Tyone more than 5 strikeouts. That's where it's set right now. You look at Tyone, I understand he's not exactly been what he was as a Yankee early on before he suffered the arm injuries with the Pittsburgh Pirates. But I think you look at a Met lineup that obviously is not what it once was, and a team that basically folded up the tents right around the MLB trade deadline. I have no issue with what Cohen and Epler did at the MLB trade deadline. Alonso's got a little hot as of late. He had a couple home runs last night in a game against the Chicago Cubs where rain wreaked havoc on the game. I'll take Jameson Tyone more than 5 strikeouts tonight for the Chicago Cubs.
I like it. I said this yesterday on Better's Eye. I'm afraid to discuss the Mets anymore because I have no idea what the rest of the season is going to be for them. It's not like they don't have talent. It never worked. I'll go to a now former New York Met. Let's take it over to the Rangers at Oakland. So the Rangers play a little small ball yesterday to get their victory. They've won 7 consecutive games. They've got Max Scherzer on the mound. It was a rough first inning for Scherzer in his debut with Texas, and then he settled down, had the 9 strikeouts. The A's have the 5th highest K percentage in all of baseball, the 6th most Ks per game as well at 9.18. So what I'm getting here in RT Sports is 7.5 strikeouts. I will take that. I'll take the over on that one. For Better's Eye, by the way, we are sponsored by BetMGM, and I'm going to take that one at plus 105 there. From a betting standpoint, I would look at the Rangers' first 5 on the run line. You can get that anywhere from minus 130 to minus 145, depending on your book also. So give me Max Scherzer to go mad and get us to the 8 strikeouts or more.
All right, let's go to the Yankees and White Sox in Chicago. And we're going to focus in on the Yankee starter Clark Schmidt, 7-6 on the season, 4.35 ERA. He's got 103 Ks. You look at his strikeout totals in the last, I would say, half a dozen starts: 7, 1, 8, 2, 2, 4. He's now getting on a Chicago team that, even coming off the victory last night, his strikeout total is only set at 4.5. I think Clark Schmidt's going to go and give you 5 strikeouts tonight in Chicago. So I'll go more than 4.5 strikeouts tonight for Clark Schmidt.
If you were going to stay in that game, and it wouldn't be an official pick for me, but I am looking at Aaron Judge. I saw something from him last night. He looked a little bit more comfortable with the stick. I know he hasn't been great since the toe injury. I'll take you to a non-sexy game and actually a non-sexy play, but I think this is going to work. So Colorado at Milwaukee. Have we not been paying attention to what William Contreras is doing right now? So from a betting standpoint, I would take the total base prop here. That's not an option for us on RT Sports. But from a betting standpoint, I'll take the over 1.5. You're getting plus money on William Contreras. So I'll take the fantasy points here at 6. He's got 2 or more bases in 8 of his last 11 games. He's going to face off against Kyle Freeland, you assume, at least twice. He has absolutely crushed against lefties. He has 5 hits in his last 2 games, William Contreras I'm talking about. And oh, by the way, 26 doubles this season. That actually leads the National League. So Contreras, from a betting standpoint, take the over 1.5 total bases. It will 100% be on my card, but I will go to the fantasy points here and get the 6 fantasy points.
We're going to go to Oakland. Not many people watching the Athletics now out in Oakland. Texas and the A's. And we're going to focus in on Corey Seager. 1.5 total bases for Corey Seager. Now, Seager in, 3 of his last 5 games or 4 of his last 6 has gone over 1.5 total bases. And I think that streak does continue tonight against the Oakland Athletics. Did it last night where he finished the game 2 for 5. He also had a double. He's hitting 349. I mean, he's hitting 349 on the season. Seager, as long as he's been healthy, has been really, really well. He's one of those guys that's helped out by the elimination of the shift in Major League Baseball. Give me Corey Seager more than 1.5 total bases tonight for the Rangers against the Oakland Athletics.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with Seager. And he hasn't had a problem batting against lefties either. I know JP Sear is a lefty. Lefty on lefty hasn't been an issue for him. Take me now to the Blue Jays and the Guardians, where I do not most typically give unders. I like to root for overs, or I like to stay away. I like the under on the strikeouts here for Yusei Kikuchi. It's 5.5. It's a good number. 4 or less strikeouts in 3 of his last 5 starts. The Guardians have the lowest K percentage in all of baseball. They strike out the least in all of baseball. They have a 13.8 K percentage versus lefties in 189 plate appearances. That is also the best in all of baseball. And Kikuchi on the road has seen his K per 9 dip almost 2 per 9 innings. So Kikuchi, we're going to go under the 5.5 strikeouts.
All right, Kikuchi under the 5.5 strikeouts. I got one more for you. We're going to go to the San Diego game in Seattle. The Padres in Seattle taking on the Mariners. 9:40 Eastern time, first pitch tonight. Fernando Tatis Jr. We're going to go less than 1.5 total bases tonight for Fernando Tatis Jr., who's been in a little bit of a cold stretch when you look at Tatis, who has gone games in which he's had really hasn't surpassed 1.5 total bases in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 straight games. I'm gonna ride the cold streak for Fernando Tatis Jr. I'm gonna go under 1.5 total bases tonight against the Seattle Mariners.
I'm not mad at that at all. I'll give you one more. All right, let's do one more. Cardinals and the Rays here. We all know that the Rays have not been the team that they were earlier in the season. Tampa, they averaged 5.3 runs per game, though, over the last 9 games. So maybe flipping things around. And I believe that there's one key. I love Randy Arozarena. I picked him as a dark horse potentially to be the MVP of this league. It's not going to happen. I love Yandy Diaz. He is right there in the thick of things to be, to win a batting title. But when you look at this team, they go as Wander Franco goes. And Wander Franco is now on fire again. So he homered on Sunday. He's batting .389 with 4 home runs over his last 9 games. Oddly enough, it coincides when this team is starting to score runs again. So I think you could look at the fantasy points if you want. I think I would lean more towards him just scoring a run. And from a betting standpoint, there are some people out there that will tell you that they don't love the run scored prop because it really is contingent on someone else forcing that to happen, right? Unless he hits a home run, which then, by the way, from a betting standpoint, you just take the home run prop. But I'll take that here because that's what I'm getting offered here at RT Sports. I would also tell you that Wander Franco total base prop is something I would look at if you're, gambling at a different book.
Like that. There you have it. So make sure to check it out. The Real-Time Sports Pick'em. Play the Real-Time Sports Daily Pick'em contest and a lineup of player props. Hit them all and win. Baseball, golf, and more. 2 correct picks, 3 times your entry, 3 correct 6 times, all the way up to 20 correct or 6 correct wins 40 times your entry. Go to rtsports.com/alarm. First-time depositors get 100% instant match up to $200 with deposit code ALARM23. Please play responsibly. For help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right. Hey, so let's stick with baseball here really quick. We gave you the Jose Ramirez-Tim Anderson fight, and I'd love to hear this here. So Rick Hahn, he's the White Sox VP, the general manager. There is a lot going on in Chicago right now on the South Side because it's a lot of he said, was there really a slap? Was relievers just sleeping in the bullpen? Here's Rick Hahn speaking his piece.
No point over the course of this year has there been a reliever sleeping in the bullpen during a game. That's just wrong. We do have a position player who has fairly serious sleep issues. And as part of our sports performance program of trying to address that issue, he has been given permission and in fact encouraged to sleep in the clubhouse at times. Earlier in the season, a couple of our veteran players approached me complaining about such behavior. To their credit, they thought they were trying to help the environment. And when I explained to them the background of the player and why we were doing that, they relented and understood. Perhaps that's something that got lost in translation in Keenan's report, but at no point have we had a player sleeping in the bullpen.
I mean, I think he's probably wrong. I'm sure players, I mean, you've been around baseball for a long time. That's a thing. Like, there have been videos all the time of relievers falling asleep, knowing that they're not pitching that day.
It happens. I think it's just a ship taking on water, and he's trying to, get rid of the water one pail at a time. When it comes to the Chicago White Sox,
one pail at a time is good.
Yeah, I mean they're not a good, they're not a good team, and obviously the story's coming out and the story's being written, and those that have been a part of that team, the culture is a massive issue. La Russa was the one that was thought to be the blame for that. Now they have a new manager, and obviously nothing really has changed in Chicago with the White Sox either. And it's been a team that you thought was kind of on the rise a couple years ago, is no longer that. And now, listen, I haven't been, I think it'd be, I agree with the veteran players. It's kind of strange. I mean, someone's got such a sleep issue that they have to sleep during games in the clubhouse while the game is going on and not paying attention to what the hell is going on. Like, that seems to be a little bit odd to me, but I'm also, I'm not a sleep therapist, nor do I work in the medical field. So he answered it directly. I think the Chicago White Sox are looking for the finish line and looking for the end of this MLB regular season.
Listen, I have a friend that has narcolepsy actually, and it's a real issue. He randomly falls asleep, and I mean we've been friends since college, and he will just suddenly not be able to keep himself awake, and he will sit on a couch. Like, he knows when he's getting tired, and he'll sit and he'll lean back and he'll fall asleep, and then a couple of minutes later, or tens of minutes later, he'll wake up and he will feel better. I think the other part of this is, though, when a guy like Lance Lynn also comes out saying that things were shaky in Chicago and he's now moved on, things just don't seem right there. And it's not necessarily all on management. When your team was expected to be good and your team now stinks, people want to blame things and people want to blame people. I mean, it's as simple as that. And that it feels like, all right, so can I blame this? Can I blame that? I'm going to blame you. So now you don't blame me. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it really is. I think it's, we're past the MLB trade deadline, which was last week, last Tuesday at 6:00, and you found out the teams that were in and the teams that were kind of out, and those that decided to pair off. And, Chicago White Sox were one of those teams that made some deals in order to pair some guys off. But, they've got some cultural issues when you look at that team in terms of having the proper, playing culture, winning culture, and having people that really kind of care. And sometimes when losing persists, people can lean into the negativity and not be positive and not be willing to fight if that's something that's A-okay and there's no kind of accountability on a night in, night out basis. And you're seeing that in Chicago. I mean, that's just really what it is. Whether it be Middleton, the Yankees reliever now, criticizing it, whether it be the story about, you mentioned it earlier in the show, Grandal slopping Tim Anderson, whether it be, the stories coming out about, relievers sleeping in the bullpen during the course of the game, and Rick Hahn having to come out and address that. There are massive issues in Chicago that go well beyond just the overall quality of the talent of the roster that they're putting on the field on a night in, night out basis.
Really quick, I know we're going to hit a break in like a minute and a half. Nick Nacera in our chat, Kelsey or Tyreek at number 6. Nick, just for us to know how many teams are in the league. because my answer might be different if it's, 10, 12, or 14 teams in the league. So just throw that out there really fast. Shout out Jessica Brand. She's in our chat, just been coding my models. Yes, Jessica, get me ready for Better's Eye. Love it. Thank you very much, Jessica. And Better Boss has been all over our chat as well. So yeah, Nick, just if you can throw it in there and we'll
say if it's a 12-team league.
If it's a 12-team league, I'm going Kelsey.
Yeah.
If it's a 10-team, I'm going Tyreek. That's my difference.
Yeah, I think it also depends on what the rules of your league are. But Kelsey is so far the standard at the tight end position in fantasy football. It's not even close.
Yeah, and barring, again, I always say this, barring anything catastrophic, but like as long as Kelsey is healthy this season, he is clearly the best tight end option in fantasy football. As for wide receiver, Tyreek Hill is amazing. And I know he said he wants to go for over 2,000, and he was on pace for over 2,000 before the one injury last year, and then Tua going out. I think Tyreek is probably going to get 1,700 receiving yards, but he's not going to get the number of catches that Kelsey will get. I would lean Kelsey here, and Santana chimes in as well. Santana goes Kelsey. So let's go. We're all together, guys. Let's go.
Yeah, all on Travis Kelce, the talented tight end who I don't think is slowing down at all for the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's going to be once again
mustache too.
Yeah, and once again, it's going to be a fantasy stud this year for the Chiefs and for every fantasy owner out there. Listen, I love the discussions when you get into it in terms of, and I think Tyreek Hill, who has a goal of having over 2,000 yards receiving, that is doable. If you're Tyreek Hill, the problem you have is the Tua injury factor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's to me is the issue that you have with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle is the concern. Now, listen, I think Mike White could step in and perform pretty well down in Miami. Do I think he's going to be Tua Tagovailoa? No, I don't. But can Mike White get the ball in the hands in that passing game of the speed receivers and Waddle and Tyreek Hill? Yeah, I think he can. And I think that was a nice kind of under-the-radar signing by the Miami Dolphins in the offseason.
Yep, I agree. The Tua thing scares me a little bit, but I don't trust Mike White to lead me to the playoffs necessarily. So that's where I sit.
We'll come back. We got a little BS detector. We got some videos we want to play as well.
Burns is back from civic duty.
That's exactly right. He's back from jury duty. We'll get into that as well. He's Keith Arizari. I'm Mark Malusis. It's Moose and Keith with you on a Tuesday right here, Better Sports Network.
So let's get into some best ball philosophy here.
Yeah.
In your experience, going back many, many, many years, drafting in national tournaments, Bradley, have you historically been shying away from the running back position in favor of wide receivers? In favor of, if you're drafting in the FFPC tight end premium format, in favor of tight ends as well. Is that the smart play when you're drafting this early in the drafting season?
Yeah, so taking value is going to be huge, and looking at like running backs and wide receivers, like you want to take a look at how the structure is. So you mentioned earlier the FFPC has a couple different types, like they've got super flex and one quarterback, and so that's going to change your strategy a little bit if you have only 2 wide receivers or if you're drafting 3 wide receivers. And of course, the PPR is a different aspect compared to other formats or other tournaments. And so keeping in mind the pass catching upside of some of the running backs may be more valuable in those formats. So the Austin Ecklers, the Christian McCaffreys may be more value because they get more receptions, and so like I loved taking late shots a couple years ago on like the JD McKissicks of the world who would get 50 receptions really cheaply. So that's something to consider. But when it comes to like overall value, like you're in the middle of a draft and you just notice that, I don't know, maybe it's Chris Godwin has fallen 14 spots, but Chris Godwin was not in your plans to be drafting. Like maybe you don't have a strong player take on Chris Godwin, or my take is that I don't think the Bucs are going to be particularly good this year. But for him to be dropping, let's say 14 spots is more than a full round. And based on the data that we've seen, if you get to draft a player more than 12 spots ahead or behind ADP, so they drop 12 or more spots, you have an 84% edge over the rest of the tournament players who are drafting this player, because typically this player isn't going to drop. The average draft position is a really strong indicator of where a player is going to go. And I think that is also on the flip side. If you are reaching too much, you're giving up value in your drafts. And so when it comes to value-based drafting, you need to consider, just because this guy isn't my plans or I don't have a strong player take on him, maybe that's your opportunity to sprinkle in some shares of this player at a good price.
It's Moose and Keith with Mark Malusis and Keith Irizarry.
All right, if you're new to the program, and make sure, and you're watching right now, YouTube, listening all over the place. It is Moose and Keith Better Sports Network. We come to you every Tuesday and play a little bit of a game. We welcome aboard our producer, Brian Burns, who will momentarily play a game called BS Detector. And what Burnsy will do is he'll read some headlines, and then Keith and I will, and some stories, and Keith and I will tell you whether or not that story is true or whether or not it is BS. Yeah. That's basically what we do. Yes, that's exactly right.
We spare nothing for the budget here.
No doubt. No doubt.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta love the megaphone. There's no doubt. Let's welcome, he's back from jury duty, is Brian Burns, who was off the last couple of weeks. He had technical issues 2 weeks ago, off for jury duty last week. And now he's back with us this week.
And I still have some technical difficulties going on.
No.
Got a new computer, doesn't have a webcam, so just going to be the old voice today.
Well, that's all right. That's all good. How was jury duty? Okay.
It was jury duty. I just respond to every question with eye for an eye, and they kick me out early every time.
Yeah, that's an interesting tactic there. So, did they actually propose a case to you?
No, I was just filling out questionnaires. I didn't even talk to anybody.
Oh, that was it. You basically took yourself out of the realm. All right, let's play a little BS. Take yourself out of the conversation just from your answers. All right, let's play a little BS detector here, Brian. What do you got first up?
All right. Odell Beckham Jr. got off to a strong start in Super Bowl 56, catching 2 passes for 52 yards and a touchdown before leaving the game in the second quarter with a torn ACL. The Baltimore Ravens wideout believes it ended what was going to be an epic performance. Quote, "People have no idea what I was actually going to do that day," he told Peter King of Pro Football Talk. Quote, "It was going to be the day where I catch 15 balls, maybe 250 yards. The game plan was for me. We would have beat them 42-17. If OBJ had not been injured in Super Bowl 56, he would have caught 15 balls for 250 plus yards. BS or no?"
All right, so I'll go first here. One, I do believe Odell Beckham Jr. believes that. I do. Fully. And I know that he said that too, so no BS there. Now we'll speculate. Moose, I don't think he was catching 15 balls for 250 yards. I mean, he might have caught 10 for 140.
Yeah, he might have been the MVP of the game.
Yeah.
It might not have come down to a final drive by the Los Angeles. I mean, there's a lot of things that come into play there. Everything Keith said, I agree with. I think the totals are BS. I don't think I think Odell Beckham Jr. really believes that. And I do believe that Odell Beckham Jr. was a massive part of that game plan that night against the Cincinnati Bengals. So it's kind of a BS, non-BS kind of a deal.
Right. Like, I think he believes it.
Yes.
But I don't believe he was getting 250.
All right, Burnsy, what's next?
Perhaps he's full of BS.
That's true. Yes.
All right, I got you. Hold on.
All right, next up. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a full-blown quarterback competition on their hands ahead of their preseason opener on Friday. On the unofficial depth chart released by the Bucs on Tuesday, the starting quarterback is listed as NA. The QB2 spot is listed as Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask. When Todd Bowles was asked about this oddity, he responded, "Neither Baker or Trask are starting quarterbacks." BS or no?
It's not BS. That's true. They're not sure. I mean, listen, Moose, I know that we're not supposed to take everything we see in practices for anything, But Baker's got a lot of interceptions during these practices. And
Yeah,
apparently Trask looks good.
Yeah, I think they're unsure as well. I agree. I think early on probably Baker had a lead, and I think Trask has kind of made it up. So I don't think that's BS.
You guys are both wrong. It was BS. They were both listed as the starting quarterback. Not the QB2.
Oh, missed the wording there. Because if we're being brutally honest, hour number one, I talked about this story and said that they were listed as Baker or Trask. I missed your words about the starting role. Oh, man. You got us.
All right. Next on the list. In 6 days, the 49ers will kick off their preseason schedule, and defensive end Nick Bosa is MIA. Not to worry, Niner fans. Head coach Kyle Shanahan didn't seem bothered, saying, no, not at all, when asked if Bosa holdout was stressful for him, because, quote, because I don't know if Bosa has ever done a training camp, and he has done pretty good. It's a little different when you're a defensive lineman. Everybody wants people here, and you want to do that stuff, but it doesn't affect the team as much from a defensive end standpoint. I have as much confidence as Nick as a player as any player I've ever been around in terms of how he prepares and everything. I know they're going to get it right, both sides, and I'm excited to see him when I do. 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan is not at all bothered by Nick Bosa's possible preseason absence. BS or no?
Yeah, I think that's BS. I think he's bothered. I mean, listen, I think he's going to say whatever he's going to say in terms of, keeping a stiff upper lip and tell you it doesn't trouble him, or that he's not been part of training camps and it doesn't really affect him, and that he can still be great during the course of the regular season. Football coaches want players in camp.
Yeah, Moose, I think there's layers to what Burns did there, right? So I think the article was not written by Burns. I think it was written by someone else. And I believe that this is what the coach said, but I'm with you, Moose, where I think it's BS. I think he is worried. Yeah, I mean, you have the defensive player of the year. You got a guy that's an absolute stud. Like, even if he's not legitimately playing, you want him there and you want him to be a part of everything. So there's the BS part of it, but I think the article is real.
Ding, ding, ding. That is correct on both accounts.
Oh, there you go. Very nice. Good job there, Keith.
All right, last one. When Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen was asked Monday by team reporter where he sees his career in 10 years, the Bills quarterback responded, "Before my days in the NFL are through, I can see myself playing for a number of teams. Look at LeBron." BS or no?
Keith, you go first since you've been hot.
Was the reporter Elena Getzenberg?
I can't give you clues.
Come on. All right. Elena's great, by the way. She used to be a researcher with us at CBS. She left to take a job up in Buffalo and now is an ESPN Buffalo reporter. She's fantastic. Anyway, I would say that is BS. I don't believe that Josh Allen is going to start citing LeBron going to other teams as what he wants to do in his future.
I'd agree.
You're correct.
All right.
Yes. Boom shakalaka.
That's all we got
goes
today.
the dynamite.
Glad to have you back, Bernsey. Welcome.
Yes.
You know what we're going to be doing next? We're going to be talking a little Ravens football because Bobby Trosset's going to join us, co-host of the Vault podcast on the Baltimore Ravens with Sarah Ellison. We'll talk a little Ravens football, the return of Lamar, and what the expectations are down in Baltimore for the Ravens this season, mixing obviously some fantasy too. We'll do that next. He's Keith, I'm Moose. The show is Moose and Keith right here on a Tuesday, Better Sports Network.
I feel like this is a quietly contentious point in Dynasty Fantasy Football, what it means to actually be rebuilding. Some people say you should never truly be rebuilding. How do you view the rebuilding versus competing dichotomy in Dynasty?
So I will be the first person to acknowledge that my preferred format or fantasy football is just redraft. The years that I have played Dynasty, it has been I've drafted a win now team because I've seen people that have just gotten into the cycle of rebuilding and thus they just don't make any progress. So if you're rebuilding for the 5th year in a row, I just, I don't know exactly how you get out of it, but yeah, it's definitely something that can happen. And a lot of people, especially when we come out of the NFL draft, everyone's just instantly shipping off, draft picks and everything. So I mean, it's definitely something that can happen.
Joey, do you feel similarly to it? Do you feel like you see people getting stuck in the rebuilding loop?
I mean, I would say people that try to rebuild in the beginning of seasons, of their fantasy seasons, I see them get stuck in that rut. I would really try to only ever rebuild if I knew I was going to miss the playoffs. Like, I'm always trying to play to win, even if it's maybe I don't know.
I think my big thing is the word rebuild is a much shorter time frame than I think most people say it should be. Like, they look at rebuild as like 3 years out competing. Rebuild, you're looking to compete next season. You know what I mean? Like, if you're doing it now, you're looking to revamp, and maybe there's a one season where you ship it off, but that very next season you should be competing. If you're doing it like that, I'm cool with it, but you gotta have a plan, not just keep getting the young players, keep getting the draft picks. Otherwise, you end up like Tim. Maybe not like Tim who gets a bye, but you make the playoffs, you're in that like 4 to 6 range every year, just hovering in the middle. Nothing ever gets better, nothing ever gets worse.
I think I play like you in Dynasty, Simon. I play in 3-year windows.
100%. That's my go-to. And with the rate at which Dynasty leagues turn over, you should really only ever play in a 3-year window.
It's Moose and Keith with Mark Malusis and Keith Irizarry.
Let's talk a little
background.
Look at the background. Let's talk a little Ravens football right now. Bobby Trosset joins us. Does a fantastic job of covering Baltimore football, and hit him up on Twitter at Bobby Baltimore, 2 E's, or Baltimore E. Co-host of the Vault podcast with Sarah Ellison. Hey, Bobby, Mark Malusis and Keith Irizarry, thanks for the time this morning.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been anything but Ravens talk, by the way, in Baltimore over the last 24 hours. as I'm sure you guys are well aware.
Yeah,
it's kind of refreshing to talk Ravens with you right now, because literally my last 12, 16 hours, barely any sleep last night, was all kind of about holding the Orioles team ownership accountable for just a preposterous situation that they've gotten themselves into with Kevin Brown, who's one of the more universally respected up and coming young broadcasters who also has a contract with ESPN. So I know we're talking Ravens, but that's been on my mind.
It's crazy.
I'll throw something out really quickly about Kevin, by the way. So Kevin, I know Kevin moderately well. When I was at MSU Varsity, he was there also. He came in, I believe, in either 2012 or 2013, kind of when I was moving on. I was so we crossed paths for about a year. He was a play-by-play announcer. I was at that point then as well. So we didn't actually work together in any booths, but through everybody that I know has always spoke glowingly of him, and our few encounters. I always loved, chatting with him, and I won't go further into how Baltimore handled it. I know you don't really want to discuss this. I just wanted to throw it out there. I like Kevin a lot.
Oh yeah. As we all do.
Yeah.
And I've already discussed this. You can go check that out. Like you said, we're talking Ravens.
Yes.
I've already blasted team ownership on my YouTube channel and on Twitter.
You should.
You can go check that out, because he's, the last thing I'll say is just it's unfortunate when, folks in the business that are as talented as Kevin are at the hands of billionaires, essentially, who are so, and not all billionaires are like this, of course, right? Dan Snyder might be in the same category as John Angelos, which we weren't aware of previous, or John Angelos might be in the category of Dan Snyder, which I don't think we were too aware of prior to this, at least to that extreme level. But it's unfortunate when they have to kind of almost be prisoners to their commitment contractually to those guys, and I think I don't know how much you guys know about my background, but I used to work for the Ravens radio network, and they showed me the door in March of 2022, and it was it was without cause firing, essentially. And the day that I decided to kind of go the direction in which you guys have gone here in non-traditional media was one of the most rewarding days of my young career to date. And days like today, yesterday, and weeks like this reaffirm why I chose to do it, because you're not walking on eggshells, right? You're not sugarcoating things. It's a fun way to live. And this is where the new media, this non-traditional media, is. So with that, I'm excited to talk some Ravens football with you guys.
Yeah, echo those sentiments, Bobby. And it's good to chat with you, and we appreciate you cutting out some time with us here on this Tuesday. let's talk a little Ravens. How refreshing is it that when you're talking about the Ravens, we're not discussing Lamar Jackson's contract? How refreshing is it that? I mean, because it feels like it was 10 years of discussing Lamar Jackson's value, his contract, and all that. How great is it the fact that that is no longer on the table?
It was an offseason unlike any other. I've been covering the team since sort of their wheelhouse ride, that magical ride that they went on in 2019. So, to have went through this offseason with so much uncertainty, so much national buzz, and kind of like the Orioles, again, different reasons, certainly different situations, but the Orioles are getting torched nationally right now, as they should be. The Ravens and even Lamar himself were getting torched throughout that process, that long 2-3 year process. So for him to be under contract for the next 5 years, for them to have committed to what they said they would do this offseason, and that was build around him more so than they ever have before. He has more at his disposal, playmakers-wise, than he ever has before in his career, is refreshing for this town. I'm sure it's beyond refreshing for Lamar. And ultimately, on paper, you would think, again, it's on paper and there's a long way to go, and this team needs to stay healthy, as you guys know. If all that ends up working out, then they should be contending for AFC titles and hopefully into February for years to come, as long as Lamar is in the equation.
Bobby, it's not even fair, but I'm going to do this way. If you took Lamar's running out of this next question, okay, take his running out of the next question, even though it's not fair, he's going to run for 900 yards, whatever it may be. How do you feel about this run game?
Take Lamar out of it. How do I feel about the run game? Well, it's hard to feel any kind of confidence right now because J.K. Dobbins has essentially become a holdout while reporting to camp. So Sarah and I, on our podcast that you mentioned at the top, The Vault, we had Ian Rappaport on during mandatory minicamp, and he described it as a hold-in. So J.K. reported to mandatory minicamp, was said to have been dealing with a soft tissue type thing, but there was clearly mixed messaging. Clearly, it's a contractual kind of holdout right now. I think there's a standoff happening between him and the front office. So obviously, as he enters the final year of his rookie deal, and if you think back a couple of years ago during his rookie season, he led all running backs with yards per carry. The guy's a workhorse. He can get involved in the screen game and the passing game when need be. He's got competitive fire. He's one of the best when healthy. And again, that's big. It's been a big if for him when if he's healthy. I think he's, a bona fide top 5, top 10 running back. We just haven't seen that. So with that uncertainty looming, and perhaps I know Sarah has been on record for saying that she feels as if he's just protecting himself because after this year and knowing what's happened to him physically on the field and what's more importantly happened with the running back market this offseason, maybe he's protecting himself throughout camp. Because you guys got to remember, a couple of years ago down in Washington for the then Redskins game, they played him in a preseason game in August, and he tore his ACL. And I have reason to believe that he's still stewing over that decision. So, again, when healthy, and Gus Edwards is a heck of a 1-2 punch with JK. Justice Hill, a solid RB3. They signed Melvin Gordon just a few weeks ago for depth purposes, and they got this Keaton Mitchell, who's an undrafted rookie that's creating some buzz. So long story short, a little bit of a long-winded answer to say there's some uncertainty that needs to be resolved between now and opening weekend. And if it does, I feel pretty dang good about that group.
All right. How about this defense, Bobby, when you look at it on the whole? We know it's been a staple of Ravens football. When you look at this defensive unit, how do you feel about their overall strength in 23?
Yeah, I think there's voids both at pass rusher and outside corner. And if I were to say what I was worried about more so between the two, it's without question corner. As you guys probably know, Marcus Peters is no longer in Baltimore. He went to Vegas. After his torn ACL, he never really became what he once was, which is unfortunate. For his sake, I hope he becomes all that and more for Vegas, but I'm not sure what it's a short-term deal that he signed with them. So I think they're trying to test it out just as much as perhaps he is. I remember he did a and he doesn't do much media, Marcus. He's not a big media guy. And he did something with The Ringer. I'm forgetting the author's name, but I think they had a connection from the West Coast growing up. And it was essentially like Marcus confronting his football immortality, which kind of tells you, dang, maybe he's wondering what he has left in the tank. Anyway, I would say this. After Marlon Humphrey and after Rock Yassin, who's not even available right now, he was their free agent free agency acquisition to essentially replace Marcus Peters. He went down a week or so ago. There is some major question marks with guys that have potential, but a lot of second-year guys like Pepe Williams and Jalen Armour-Davis. I just don't know who they are at this point in their young careers. Same with Brandon Stevens. Are these guys capable of being CB2 behind Marlon Humphrey? We know what Marlon Humphrey is. He's a Pro Bowl caliber cornerback who can play inside, outside, whatever. Press, you name it. So I would say, aside from that, they have a great safety duo in Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton. The buzz out of training camp right now is that Kyle Hamilton, second-year safety out of Notre Dame, has been the best player on the field. But I started with sort of the negative, right? Because that's what's been on everybody's minds right now, because as we know, especially in Baltimore, cornerback depth can be an issue, and it can be an issue quickly.
Do you think that this team wins the division?
I think they're certainly capable. I'm still giving the edge to Cincinnati right now because I think they deserve that recognition and honor. I want to see the way in which Lamar and Todd Monken coexist with one another under essentially a first-year offensive coordinator, not in the league, but with Lamar. And Lamar hasn't yet run consistently a pro-style offense in the NFL. We know he did so extremely well and successfully under Bobby Petrino at Louisville, but I want to see, there's a lot of mouths to feed, and there's a lot of personalities. Odell Beckham Jr. is probably the biggest personality, and he's on a one-year prove-it deal, $15 million. Imagine that for a one-year prove-it deal. The Ravens overpaid to get him because obviously there was a direct correlation, I think, in terms of trying to convince Lamar to stay. Not sure if Lamar had other options, but that's a conversation for another time. So anyway, they're certainly capable, but right now I see them as a playoff team, but a wild card one.
I want to ask you basically on the perception of Lamar when you look at it, of everything that you've been around him his entire career down in Baltimore. Tell us a little bit, or give us a little bit of a feel about when everything was going on. What really makes Lamar Jackson tick?
Well, gosh, I mean, he put on his business hat, that's for sure. Do you guys remember the tweet that went out as John Harbaugh was sitting down with the media at the owners' meetings in Arizona? I think he was scheduled for, what was it? Maybe 11:45, 11:40 a.m., something like that in March, somewhere around then. And he put out a tweet essentially announcing the trade request that the organization already knew about, but he made it public as Harbs was sitting down with the media, essentially an ambush. That feels as if it was, to your point earlier on, 10 years ago. But aside from some of that drama, pre-signing, pre-contract extension, Lamar is Lamar. He is now, I guess no longer anymore in terms of average annual value, but for a good portion of this offseason, he was the highest paid player in football. And he did so without an agent, which was obviously the most talked about storyline probably of the offseason. So he's got a heck of a level head on his shoulders. He loves South Florida. He gives back to South Florida like no one else. Camps, his time, you name it, giving back to the youth. So we all know what he's like as a football player. He's possibly the best of all time when it comes to running abilities at the quarterback position. Can he take the next step as a passer this year and perhaps do what's difficult to do when he hasn't really had a choice over these last few seasons, and that's actually take off the Superman cape and divvy it up and hit your checkdowns, hit your screens when possible. Use your running backs in the pass game. Take away from the wear and tear that he's literally had to. I mean, he's willed this team to victory. And I know he hasn't been available down the stretch. That's certainly been a topic of conversation in the last 2 years. In December, he really hasn't been there due to injury. So will that become a trend in year 3? We're hoping not. Right now, you hope it's just a fluke, bad luck. The wear and tear of what he's been.
Yeah.
He's put this team on his back for years. Now he has more talent at his disposal than he ever has before. Can he start to use that and feed those mouths? And a lot of that's going to become Todd Monken's biggest task. He's going to be calling all the shots up in the booth. But if you look at Todd's trajectory, he's going to have balance. He's going to touch every blade, right? And he's going to improve Lamar as a passer. Let's hope not the way that Jameis Winston Jameis Winston had some issues there under Todd, but from an interception standpoint, but that has not been Lamar's game. From a decision-making standpoint, he is, to me, really solid. The outside the numbers stuff, will that take a step forward? We're hoping so, and he's got the guys to do it.
Bobby Trosset. Bobby, last one for me. Give me a bold prediction. Ravens bold prediction 2023. That you think goes down. It could be a player, could be team, whatever it might be.
Oh, man. Bold prediction for the Ravens. Player, team. I think Pat Ricard, based on a tweet that, and this we covered this on this morning's episode. Pat Ricard, fullback, undrafted, 2017, worked his way into the team, played D-line the first couple of years, and the guy's a heck of a story. Played college football at Maine, so just an awesome underdog story. I would not be surprised if he's going to get a chance to get some run at guard. Unfortunately, and you guys know this, like covering the league, fullback is no longer universally acknowledged in the NFL. And Greg Roman is no longer here. He was one of the few offensive coordinators where fullbacks could actually flourish in his scheme. Now, Todd Monken's doing things differently. And based on what John Harbaugh said on Monday, I get the sense that Pat's roster, I don't know if Pat's roster spot is in jeopardy because the cap hit is significant. But I think they're going to try and boost his role a little bit. And I would not be surprised if you see Pat Ricard working in, maybe pulling with some guard schematically stuff that Todd Monken puts together.
I like it.
Bobby Trosset, co-host of the Vault podcast on the Baltimore Ravens with Sarah Ellison. And Bobby, we appreciate your work. You do an unbelievable job, and we appreciate you taking the time here on this Tuesday morning.
Keith, Mark, appreciate it. Good meeting you guys, and hopefully do it again during the season. Have a great show.
You got it.
Thanks,
you as
Bobby.
well. And hopefully we will. And Lamar Jackson, everyone's a little bullish on Lamar Jackson this year.
I think you should be.
Yeah.
I think it's fair. Yeah. I got a Maine story, by the way, really, really quick. I can give you a 30-second story. Doing a Hofstra football game up in Maine, and our professor who packed our equipment didn't pack us with a Comrex. And we had to do the broadcast. It was me and Kevin Winter. You guys know him.
Yeah.
You hear him all the time on ESPN. We had to do a broadcast. I was the color commentator. He was the play-by-play announcer. We had a phone, and we leaned out the booth window, and he would finish his call. He would pass the phone to me. I would make a point. I would pass it back to him. That's how we did the broadcast that day.
That's brutal. But I'm sure it sounded good. It was a good memory.
It was fine. Yeah, but it is a memory. Kevin and I joke about it whenever we chat. It's funny. Like, that's one of the stories that always comes to mind. Yeah,
we'll come back. We got our AFC North trifecta. We're going to do that next. It's Moose and Keith with you on this Tuesday, Better Sports Network.
Breece Hall right now, and I've talked to plenty of high-stakes players. I'm sure you have too, Kev. Had Hall not torn his ACL last year, he might have been the 101 in drafts this year. That's how good he was looking last year, and obviously with the addition of Aaron Rodgers. At the 305, running back 11 behind Derrick Henry and Ramondre Stevenson, right ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs and Najee Harris. Your thoughts on him as a mid-third round pick? How have you been attacking him? Have you been getting him at that spot so far this year?
Yeah, if I start out with two wide receivers, Breece Hall is right at the top of the queue coming into the third. If I knew he'd be healthy for week one, I was still a little.
Well, he'd be going higher than the mid third.
Right. He may go 101 or RB1 at least.
Yeah.
But I don't think we know that even if he's healthy in spring and the summer, I still like if I'm running a team, if I'm the coach, I'm bringing him back slow. Like he's on a pitch count. Like I want him for the end of the season because I got Aaron Rodgers for the playoffs, right? Like even if he's fully healthy, I would work him in slow. But that is actually what you want. Like he's still going to get the high value touches. So yeah, if we know he's healthy, he's a first rounder. So like if he's sitting there in the third, especially when I get two wide receivers to start, I'll take Hall all day.
Yeah, it almost makes you think that the uncertainty with Breece Hall has made him unfairly fall too far, right? Like because we're talking about the team here in June, they're still hoping that he's ready for week 1. This is not, oh, we'll see what happens. Oh, we're taking it day by day. Oh, we're liking how he's coming along. No, they still think by week 1. And the fact that we have that timeline, I think maybe bumps him up, especially as the drafting season gets deeper and deeper here in July and August. Maybe we start seeing him go up the boards as well.
It's Moose and Keith with Mark Malusis and Keith Irizarry.
Love the pronunciation of your last name as we're coming out. Let's play a little AFC North trifecta. Division winner 2023 AFC North, Keith, is whom?
I think it's the Bengals. It's not the best value. They're the shortest odds at plus 150. I know Jamar Chase came out and said he would rather Burrow just sit out to like week 5, maybe even longer, be ready for the playoffs, don't need to rush anything back. I just look at that team and I understand that, typically there's going to be a downslide at some point. I don't think it's this year. I think Cincinnati wins that division.
I'm going to give you one. I like the Browns this year.
Don't steal my Cleveland Browns.
I like the Browns this year.
Yeah, you do.
I do. I'm going to go, and it's a little bit of a projection because it's going on the idea that I'm going to get a really good Deshaun Watson. And I go on the idea that it could clearly crash and burn. Like if Deshaun Watson looks like the quarterback he did a year ago, and that's now the version, and he can't continue to knock off that ring rust, and he'll never be the quarterback again that he was with the Houston Texans, then the Browns have no shot of winning the AFC North. I'm going to go on the idea that last year was him being out of football for 2 years and that he's going to hit the ground running. Love Nick Chubb. We'll get into that, running the football. Love Amari Cooper as the number 1 wideout. Defense and the edge rushers are legit. We understand that. I'm going to take the Browns at 4-1 because, listen, I love Joe Burrow. We've talked about it a number of times. I mean, Joe Burrow might be one of my favorite players in all the National Football League. So don't deny that. Concerned about that injury that he has.
Yeah, I can see that.
And how limited he'll be. And I'm going to go on the idea, a little bit of projection, that Watson is back to being his top 5 quarterback self this year for the Cleveland Browns. And if he is, then I'll take the Browns at 4-1 to win the division.
Yeah, I could totally see a path for that to happen. So our next topic is favorite player for fantasy for AFC North. So why don't you go first on this one to continue along with the Browns?
Yeah, I gave you kind of a little bit of a feel. I love Chubb as a running back. I mean, I do. I think there are other guys that are flashier when you look at Christian McCaffrey with San Francisco, Saquon Barkley with the Giants. Clearly Bijan Robinson with the Atlanta Falcons going to get a lot of burn. I like Travis Etienne with the Jacksonville Jaguars, a little concerned about health and injuries and usage rate down there in Jacksonville. Chubb is a guy I think that you can count on. And he's going to be, he's a bulldog of a running back. That he's strong, that he's going to get touches, that he's going to get goal line carries. Chubb was a guy that was disrespected coming out of Georgia. He's been really, really good for the Cleveland Browns. He's not the best fantasy player in the AFC North. I'm not going to tell you that he is. He might be my favorite, though. I'll go Nick Chubb.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, what we did in hour number 1. We're doing in hour number 2. So we did it with the NFC North. We're doing it with the AFC North, the trifecta. And this second question is the favorite player for fantasy, not necessarily the best player coming out of that division. If it were me, my favorite guy, it's Lamar Jackson. And again, it kind of echoes what I said about Justin Fields in hour number 1. It's why I'm doing it. If you can tell, I have trends. This is how I work. So I do not want to draft a quarterback in round 1, round 2, round 3. In round 4 is where I'll start looking at QBs. Okay. And Lamar Jackson is another one where I'm looking at the ADPs. I can get him at the end of round 4, early round 5. It allows me a lot more value with my other picks in round 1, 2, and 3, and then potentially in round 4. And now that we know that Lamar Jackson is going nowhere for a long time from Baltimore, I think that he's going to play looser. And I think you're going to see a guy that looks a lot more like the player we saw in 2019 and in 2020. Okay. So like 2020 ran for 1,000 yards. 2019 ran for 1,200 yards. I don't think he's ever going to be the quarterback that throws for 4,000 yards, but can I get 3,200 passing yards, 1,000 rushing yards? Can I get 28 passing touchdowns based off of just having more options around him to throw the ball to? And can I get 5 to 7 rushing touchdowns? Give me all of that. That's why he's my favorite fantasy player in the AFC North.
Like that. All right. Favorite futures bet for the AFC North. I'll go first again. I'll take the lead. I'm going to go to the Steelers wideout George Pickens, another Georgia player, over 750.5 receiving yards. Now, last year had 52 catches, 801 yards, 4 touchdowns, had 84 targets. I think year 2, obviously, with Kenny Pickett in Pittsburgh as the quarterback, Pickens can make, as we've seen in training camp, it's all last year. He makes these unbelievable acrobatic catches. I think slowly but surely he's going to become the number 1 guy in Pittsburgh and the best receiver in that room. I'll go Pickens over 750.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, I actually think this is your best play I maybe have ever heard you give on Moose and Keith. I think this number is so grossly under. This should have been like 815.5 should have been the number. So I'll take the over with you. I'm going to just take the Ravens to make the playoffs. Minus 150. It's not the best value for you, but listen to Bobby talk, and then you kind of just look at this roster in general, even in that division where it's going to be difficult. I think they can be a wild card. I think they're going to win 9 to 10 games, gets in the playoffs, minus 150. That's my future play.
Love that. There you have it. What a show.
Wow.
Thanks to Matthew Coller and Bobby Trosset for joining us. Brian Burns, welcome back as our producer. Fantastic job. Everybody in the chat session, thanks for being along with us here on Moose and Keith here on the Better Sports Network. Keith, we're off next week.
We are. Shout out to our new family in Boston, by the way, too. Thank you, Boston.
That's it. See you in a couple weeks. It's Moose and Keith with you right here on the Better Sports Network.